All right. Hello, everyone. Welcome to another amazing edition of our webinar series. And my name just happens to be Christine Conti. I am not the Sarah Cooperman. I know. So you're stuck with me today. And what I would love for you to do is right now, in the chat, if you could drop in, where are you coming to us from? And are you in Texas? Are you melting? What is happening around the country, around the world, wherever you're joining us from? And before we even get started, we are all going to be monitoring the chat. So if at any point you want to put something in there, you've got a question, we will have some time, we'll kind of take a look. If there's certain questions or topics that you want us to address personally, just put it in the chat because this is a webinar that we are very, I want to say, is it nervously excited about? I think is probably the right term for what we're about to undertake. So before we get ourselves started, there's a few things that I want to share with you. Number one, the panel of amazing human beings that I'm surrounded with today are here to help educate, to help open the dialogue that needs to be shared, needs to be shouted with the world. And this topic today is not something that should be taken lightly. This is something that is going to make you maybe uncomfortable. And the way that we learn in the world is by being uncomfortable. That is when the best learning takes place. And that is how we evolve as human beings. And that's what we're here to do today, to evolve, to help make people feel more included. And the word of the day happens to be inclusivity. That's the word, okay? So how do we improve inclusivity? And specifically, we're going to be dealing with the fitness industry. Now, I know that many people have lots of different ideas and they come from different backgrounds and experiences, but I want you to really think about the fitness industry tonight, because all of us have decades, we've got like a pretty much a century of experience between all of us dealing in different business aspects and fitness and teaching and personal training and education out the wazoo. I had to mention that Siri's got a degree from Harvard. I had to say it, I'm sorry. But all of us have, she didn't want me to say that, that's why I had to say it. So we all have very diverse backgrounds and experiences. And that is something that should be a gift, but it's also something that we need to celebrate in other people. So I want to start, before I introduce everyone, with this quote. And the quote that I love to live by is that I would rather be excluded for including people than be included for excluding people. And I want you to think about that for a moment. Think about all the times in your life where you felt excluded. You felt that you weren't welcome. And it probably wasn't a good feeling. So tonight, we are going to be opening the dialogue on some really important topics. And this is about embracing the LGBTQ community and inclusivity in the fitness industry, and how are we doing, and what can we do, and how can we educate ourselves by doing this. So we say this is groundbreaking because I want to applaud everyone right now for being here tonight, because this is a subject that is not comfortable for everyone to speak about. And what's interesting is that the topics that are the most uncomfortable, people tend to shy away from, right? Or I don't want to deal with that, or I don't want to talk about it. I don't want to offend anyone. And in the meantime, what we should be doing is being open to other people's ideas and their feelings. And that's what we should be doing as fitness professionals every time we walk into a studio or we work with someone, right? Ask them a question, open the dialogue, because if you're wrong, maybe they'll tell you. hey, I don't like to be called that, where that's kind of offensive. Wow, I just learned something, as opposed to never asking. So that's what we're here to do tonight. And I want to introduce our speakers and get right into this. If you're looking for the low energy, moderator tonight, you're in the wrong place, because you got me. So I want to throw this out here right now. Our first panelist tonight is a visionary who is also the CEO and founder of Muscle Mix Music, Denise Mbezi. Welcome, welcome. One of the first fitness music companies worldwide. Used to be a DJ and instructor. I love that. With over 3 decades of experience. Denise, welcome.
Nice to see everybody. Hi, everyone. I see a couple of familiar names up there. Nice to be here. And thank you so much. And I just want to start out by saying that as a gay woman, I never would have imagined in my lifetime that anything like this would ever have occurred. A panel of people talking about LGBTQ issues in an inclusive way, in an accepting way, just even being considerate about it. It's amazing. So I applaud SCW and all you for doing this. So it's great. Thank you for
including Denise. We're going to come back to you in a moment, because those 3 decades, I think they're gonna be in handy in a moment. Yeah. So appreciate you being so open and selfless and being able to share with us. So we're really going to look forward to your kind of that different lens of this topic. Next, we have the amazing Christine DeFilippis. And she is an unconventional fitness pro, which I love. After 30 years in the industry, struggling with eating disorders, weight cycling, body dysmorphia, and a lot of unhappiness, Christine shifted her focus to joyful movement, opened Pop Fit Studio, weight neutral and inclusive fitness studio in the Philadelphia suburbs. I think this is really important that her company, Fit Pro Ed, is the host of Breaking Body Biases, a podcast that amplifies voices of fit pros, creating more inclusivity in the fitness industry. So Christine, thank you so much for joining us tonight.
Yes, thank you so much for having me. And I'm looking forward to learning as much as I am sharing some of my own experiences and what we do at my studio.
Thank you, thank you. And Siri Chalazi, thank you for being here as well. 15+ year veteran of the fitness industry, master trainer, teaching Pilates, bar, yoga, dance, step to hit, is certified by all the major companies out there, passionately training instructors, presents at conferences. But what I want to highlight is that besides fitness, Siri has a second career as an academic researcher on behavioral science and gender equality. So Siri, we look forward to your lens and your view.
Thank you, Christine. It's such a delight and an honor to be here, especially surrounded by these incredible fellow panelists. And thank you all for joining. What an important topic.
And not to be last, but the Stacy Lee Krause is with us tonight as well. So internationally recognized, successful education programs, very important. Stacy addresses emotional health, which includes PTSD through integration of mind and breath and movement. But she does have a dedication to foot fitness, which is very important. I love that. And she has been on stages, for nearly 15 years. Stacy is amazing as well, if you get a chance to check that out. And she launched a virtual studio, teaches all over the place. If you haven't seen her, you will. But I just want to thank everyone for being here, for being open about talking about this kind of uncomfortable topic. And right now, what we're going to be opening is we're opening the dialogue right now. And we want to make sure that you realize that this is a space where we are going to address some of our opinions, and you may hear us say something that, maybe you don't agree with it completely, and that's okay. This is not, we were talking before, and we hate the word safe space, because safe space sometimes brings out some biases and some things that may not, may come across in a way that you don't intend. And this is still an accountable space. So we like to think of impact versus intent, or intent versus impact. So sometimes people with the best intentions may not realize how they are impacting other people. So when we speak again tonight, if you feel that that is, impacting you in a negative way, we are open to continuing that dialogue, off of the webinar, because that is how we grow. We open a conversation, and sometimes you have to have a one-on-one conversation. So that is why we're here to talk about inclusivity in the fitness industry and how we can be better at including others. So with that said, we're going to get started, and we want to talk first about kind of the evolution of the movement. I would say, the LGBTQ, even that terminology. Let's go there. So Denise, you have been in the industry just by default the longest, okay? And I'm curious, we're going to start with you. What have you seen when you were first in the industry? And I know you mentioned this was, wow, I'm so happy that this is the topic. I never would have imagined. Well, why?
Why would I never imagined it? Well, as a 15-year-old girl who knew that I liked girls, it was unheard of back in the 70s to even discuss that, say it out loud, let alone tell your parents or anything like that. So the idea that here we are, fast forward 30 some odd, well, I'm 59 now, years later, just talking about it, it warms my heart that people are wanting to be inclusive and be accepting of at least, the gay lifestyle. I still have a lot of questions myself about BTQ, all the other letters. So I don't know everything. I can only tell you my experiences in life, and not only, of course, how it applies to fitness. I would say fitness, in my experience, has always been a little bit more inclusive. I don't know if you guys have noticed that, but I feel like people have been very accepting and inclusive already. So maybe that hasn't changed in the fitness arena as much in my view. But I think it's important to be sensitive to certain things that are said. And maybe it affects you more when you're a child. I don't know, but I could still see it as adult and with adults. That as a kid, when people used to say to me over and over again, do you have a boyfriend? Do you have a boyfriend? Do you have a boyfriend? Eventually, you start gaining shame around that. Like, no, I don't have a boyfriend. And, at the time I couldn't say I have a girlfriend, but I could, but it wouldn't have gone over well. So I think we have to think a little bit more, maybe not say things automatically like, hey, where's your husband tonight? Not only is it that it could be a wife instead, but also it could be that they're divorced or their husband left them, or, there's a lot of other issues unrelated to this topic. So, I'm not in favor of like tiptoeing around everything that we say, because, hey, we're human. And like you said earlier, we're used to, we've been on this planet for a long time, some of us longer than others. But I think being aware and sensitive, think, and don't always assume that everybody who's a male has a wife and everybody's a wife, a woman has a husband, and so forth. From that standpoint, just think about it. That's all. I'm just proposing that. So honestly, in fitness, I haven't seen much oppression. I haven't experienced it anyway. Maybe one of you ladies have, but I haven't. I haven't experienced it. Of course, the terminology of gender, names, pronouns. Again, that's not. I'm here to learn about that, because that's not something I'm very familiar with myself. But maybe that has started to change. Seeing like Christine have she, her on her camera. That's new. So hopefully that answered your question.
So, and I think, Sierra, I'm going to ask you the same thing. Have you noticed, aside from, the way people speak, maybe being more open to, not saying husband or assuming, have you seen anything change?
Yeah, I love the point, Denise, that you highlighted about us learning to make maybe slightly fewer assumptions, because I just think that's good for us humans in general, right? We tend to make a lot of assumptions based on patterns, associations that we've absorbed unconsciously since we were children. I mean, we see that kids as young as 5 and 6 years old have already absorbed societal gender stereotypes about what women are like and what men are like, not to mention all these other groups. And so I think the more as adults we learn to challenge some of those and maybe pause before we just assume is great. I do think the other thing that has really shifted, and the numbers actually bear this out, is the LGBTQ community is growing. That means that the number of LGBTQ community members in our classes, in our programs, in our facilities is also growing. And what I think is heartening is that there's been in parallel a growing awareness. And I'm not saying we're perfect, but I'm saying we're on a journey, and I think we're moving in the right direction in terms of how we can be more inclusive consciously toward members of the LGBTQ community, but also others. I love the quote, Christine, that you shared in the beginning. And I have another one kind of similar that I like to use often, which is, if you're not intentionally including, you are unintentionally excluding. So just staying with the status quo and doing what you've been doing for the last 10 years or 40 years in a rapidly changing world is not enough. We have to consciously make the effort to be educating ourselves, to be staying with the times, to be asking the question of our students, our clients, our members, what more can we do, right? How are we serving you today? Well, where are we not serving you? Where are you seeing that we're doing things that are unintentionally excluding, and then be better? And I think that's a mindset that's really starting to come into our industry.
That's actually, it warms your heart a little bit. What I think is interesting, and Christine, I'm going to have you, kind of respond to something similar. Do you really think that that the number of LGBTQ humans is increasing, or are we just more comfortable expressing how we feel? Because normally your body tells you who you are, right? Your body writes your story, and, people don't always act on it. And now, do people just feel more comfortable? Do you really think there's different, do you really think there's more people that associate with, different she, her, him, they, it, or are we just giving people, allowing them the opportunity to express it? I just think that's something to think about at this point of, what were you like 20 years ago or 10 years ago? Are you more aware right now when you're talking to an audience or teaching your group classes? So, Christine, what are your thoughts on this?
100%, because I think that I can't really speak on statistically if there are more people, or if, like you said, there's just more openness around this topic. I definitely know from my personal experience, growing up, I mean, I'm 49, so I grew up in a decade, in a time that too was not, it wasn't acceptable. I grew up in a very conservative, religious household. So there were definitely like roles that you played as a female. And I think that my eyes have been opened up in a lot of ways. I mean, for many years, I hid my life because I'm bisexual. And anytime I had a relationship with a woman, I hid it because it was not something that I felt comfortable sharing with my family. And it just wasn't accepted. So I've seen it just from a personal standpoint. I see younger people that I know, relatives that live a different life than what I did when I was younger. And then I also see, just from a business ownership standpoint, how different it is in the hiring process, how different it is with policies that are put in place in companies, in businesses, because they want to be more inclusive and they want to foster that inclusive community, not just with the gym goers coming in, but also with staff. And then, like I said, the hiring processes, and then recruitment of clients. We want to make sure that everyone feels welcome and celebrated, and not, again, going back to the assumption thing, there's so many assumptions we can make about people when they first walk in our classes. And we have to go back and figure out like, why are we thinking these things, where it stems from. It comes from our own lived experiences. It comes from culture, and it's a lot to unpack and unlearn and get comfortable with. But it is really important to have these conversations and to learn from one another and to create these spaces that people feel welcome and celebrated in.
Thanks so much, Christine. I always write down, some tidbits and notes. And what's interesting as you're talking, I'm hoping all of us are kind of thinking about this, is how do we go about making people feel more welcome? And that's something I hope that all of us are sitting back and reflecting, because these webinars are for you, the fitness professional. And, when we think of, what type of business, are you a business owner? Are you a manager? Are you are you just a fitness instructor? Is this your part-time? Is it your full-time? How does this relate to you and the way that you serve your clients, the way that you make your clients feel? And at the end of the day, it's how you make them feel. You are your own brand. And what is it that you're doing to attract people to you and make them feel like, I want to be around you because you make me feel good? So Stacey, I'm gonna pass it over to you for a moment. I know that we've talked a lot about inclusivity and things that are growing. What have you seen? What are your thoughts on people being more open, or even if it's something that you saw that may not be better?
That's interesting. Well, currently I'm teaching in a facility. It's a very interesting facility. It's a super swanky residential building that has a beautiful gym and a beautiful fitness center. And so the members are mostly residents, and they're mostly young. So this is a very interesting group. I'm 54. It's an interesting group for me because I would say the oldest student is about 35. Now, I currently have 2 Caseys, 2 Logans, and 3 Taylors in my class, right? I know. So when I first started kind of meeting people and looking at rosters, I'm like, how do I navigate this? And at a little bit of a challenging time. I do use the term safe space, and that could already be outdated. I mean, as we started off this webinar to say, we're not really fans of safe space, but I always open my class with, this is a safe space. And I might slip up. I've been teaching for 30 years, and I might say ladies, and I might say, hey guys, it might happen. But I want you to know I come from a very authentic place. And this idea of inclusivity is ever expanding, never ending, always expanding, as we're starting to see now. So it's the beginning of a lot of conversations. And please, if there's anything that's offensive or any place that I can grow, let's take a conversation offline and help me to understand what's happening, what you need from me, so that you do feel really safe and really included here. There's this very interesting, my personal story is that in 2007, I had my very first and only intimate relationship with a woman. And I was in San Francisco at the time, and I was walking with my very dear friend, and she said, okay, now you're with a woman, so you're gay. And it had never even occurred to me. And I said, well, and she said, well, so you're bi. And I paused. I said, well, no. And she stopped, and she was a little bit annoyed. And she said, well, then what are you? Mm-hmm. And I said, I'm Stacey. That's what I've got for you. I ended up being in this relationship for 7 years, but I still never identified necessarily with any category or group. I didn't not identify with them. I think we're people, and it's about authenticity. So for me, what I've seen is a growing within me, and maybe this is my lack of education, and I apologize for that, but I feel this little sense of trepidation and a little bit of fear, because it is such a rapidly expanding topic, and it is a little bit fiery, it's a little bit heated. And I think as instructors, if we're facing 15 or 50 people in our room, it's the most important thing for me is to let my students know that this is a safe space, that I am wanting to include each and every person in here, as long as we can respect each other's needs and boundaries. So even in terms of getting onto this webinar, we were talking about the fact that this could be a challenging webinar. So I think what I'm seeing these days is that people are more open, but more fearful in a different way, more fearful of making mistakes. And how can we start to normalize this great big wave of change and embrace it in a way where people are not nervous?
Thank you so much, Stacey, for sharing that. And again, this is a very powerful topic. This is why Sarah chose to hand this off. I'm just kidding. But this is something that's really important. And there's a couple things that came to mind when you were talking. And one of them is that what is the importance of, or what is effective communication? That is the next question that I think we need to address a little bit. It seems like in general, we've all seen this evolution of, okay, we've got these terms now. Okay, we've got these terms and we always want to put people in boxes like this person is this and this person is that. And you don't walk around. And this is what's interesting is that when someone asks you, who are you? What do you do? If someone says, who are you? What do you say? And in the fitness, if someone asked me, who am I might have said back in, I don't know, 20 years ago, I am a business owner. I am a teacher. I am a mother, whatever it is. But do you really say that, I am a lesbian? I am, whatever you want to say. I'm transgender. I am non-binary. Like, what is that communication? Do people say that, or are we dancing around the fact that we are human beings, and does it matter? And I know that this is very uncomfortable for people because, there's this whole movement of we're in a studio when we've got to cater to these type of people and these type of people and put them in boxes. And by us not talking about this, aren't we being exclusive? Aren't we excluding people by not saying anything? But then if we say this class is only for the LGBTQ community, are we then excluding everybody else?
And there are so many, for lack of a better word, like segregated or special classes, whether that is specifically, that's all. Just stay there.
Yeah. And that's a really great, so we just had a question come in. I don't know if anyone, feels this way. Do clients ever bring it up? I'm going to just go from the chat. So do clients ever bring it up, or do you approach them? Is the next, the next thing.
Which is very tricky. Let's just back up a little bit and how we stand in front of the classroom in the beginning and introduce ourselves, and please let me know if you have injuries or recent surgeries, if you're pregnant or postnatal, right? How long is that list that we need to run through, the laundry list of questions that, please, if you've not had these conversations with me, please do. Do we all still do that? And, do we all know about the prenatal person who's in the room with us? Because do they always come up and share? But yet at the same time, it's our responsibility to keep our students safe. So that gets a little bit tricky as well. I have had 2 different students approach me because I teach some trauma-informed classes. And now we're talking about a slightly different situation, but there are certain postures that will tend to make those traumatized by sexual assault very uncomfortable. So I've had it 2 different times. Students approach me to say there are going to be some postures that I will not participate in. I also had one student approach me and say, I'm, very sensitive to being touched within a trauma-informed environment. It started me kind of down a rabbit hole, wondering how many people aren't saying things.
And it's not only a matter of hurting someone's feelings, although that is part of it. It's also, we're saving people's lives. I mean, you asked earlier about have the numbers increased, and Siri would know because she's the scientist of the group of the statistics. But I believe that it's just more aware. I mean, how many people over the years committed suicide for being gay, trans, whatever, and it still goes on today. So, to me, I think this all boils down to kindness. I know I'm a little bit of an optimist, but I think this just all boils down to kindness on both sides. Can we be kind to each other in thinking before we speak and not assuming as much? But on the other side, if we were the person that heard something that hurt us, give us a little bit of wiggle room here. We're still learning how to navigate some of this new stuff, whatever that is. If we hurt you, and someone said it to you, don't get defensive. I can't do that or whatever. Just say, oh my God, I'm so sorry, and move on. I won't do it again. Thanks for letting me know. If we just be kind and care about each other, to me, it's that simple, but maybe I'm just simplifying something.
So what I'd like to do, go ahead, Christine.
So I agree. And I think that when we go back to when you guys were talking about this question, I think some of it is, it goes all the way back to like when we first meet a client and just asking them like what they want to be referred to. On our intake forms, like we no longer have like male, females or options. There are other options other than that. But there's a lot of things that we don't no longer put on there, like, are you married or single? Like that's not relevant to what I do with you, whether you have a spouse or whether you're in a relationship and who that is with. So really meeting people where they are and having that communication go back to like intake forms in your software. If people are, I own a boutique studio. So when they register for classes, they'll have the option to have pronouns and select those pronouns and put in what their goals are. All those things on the software kind of align with that. So the communication starts from the second that they walk into the studio, but even going before that, like on your marketing, on your website and speaking, like I learned from a marketing standpoint, you have this avatar and it has all these, I work with females that are postpartum that want to get back in shape or whatever your niche is, but we need to go back to like what their struggles are. Like their struggles aren't whether or not they're male or female or gay or lesbian or transgender, or those usually aren't the struggles that they have when they're coming into a fitness class. So taking that barrier down, that they feel welcome in the first place, and then they're coming to your workouts, and then I don't know, it just seems like it's like communicating with them for me is just whatever they tell me. So I have an interesting last name that always gets mispronounced. So sometimes I just tell them what it is. And I don't, if you have a nickname that you go by, my husband's name is very Italian and he goes by a nickname. So like, you just have to tell people. And if you get it wrong, people get my name wrong all the time. And they're like, oh, I'm sorry. Again, impact or intention, they didn't mean it, but just learning. And in this situation, like growing when I have clients that are non-binary. I have clients that are transgender, and like when you don't understand something, that's when it becomes kind of uncomfortable and awkward, and just being open and learning, just being kind of understanding in that way.
I have a question for all of us. I mean, just the audience, everyone that is on this webinar right now. Have you ever asked someone if they said, I'm non-binary? Have you ever asked them, hey, what exactly does that mean? These are human questions. These are questions that if someone says, I'm non-binary, it's almost like they shared something with you that's really powerful. And no offense, but I think sometimes people, when you tell someone something and they don't understand, or they just kind of like brush it off because they're a little the most powerful thing that you can do, I think, is ask someone questions. Ask them, because when you ask people questions, it means that you care. The second you stop asking questions, and this goes far beyond the fitness industry, this goes relationships and communication in general, questions mean that you care. The second you stop asking questions, people think you don't care. Or
Christine, I'm sorry to interrupt.
God.
Can I add some nuance to that, right? Because all questions are not created equal. And so I was just thinking about Denise's anecdote earlier of always being asked about whether she had a boyfriend, right? Can you imagine a person, for example, who identifies as non-binary, and 10 times a day someone's like, so what does non-binary mean? So who do you sleep with exactly? So what's like stuff down there, right? Those are going to be awful questions to respond to day in and day out. So there's an element of, if it's factual information, not specific to that person, that we could find out maybe by Googling. I think that's the point when we should take the responsibility on our own shoulders to educate ourselves. But what would be a very empathetic question to ask, right, would be like, something that's personal to that individual, like, wow, how does that show up for you? Like, what has your experience been? Like, how do you experience our facility? Is there something that we could do to make you feel more good? Those types of questions, I think, are highly respectful, because we're seeking to understand something unique about that person and actually giving them a voice, rather than asking them to educate us and, satisfying our tawdry curiosity.
Siri, that is amazing. I'm going to say that that's an amazing way to look at this as well. And again, I was just taking it as like just a one-on-one conversation of, I'm interested in you. Like I'm interested. Tell me about, and again, I would be awkward if it was just someone you met on the street, and why that would be that conversation. I'm not really sure what that would go down, but I want to talk about this in the last 10 minutes that we have, is really giving everyone on this webinar some key takeaways, some really powerful things. And Christine, you started talking about marketing. And I want to tell you that there's actually a good friend of mine opened this boutique spin studio in this area or around where I live. And she put up a little sticker on the window that is a, rainbow flag. Okay. I didn't think anything of it. As a girl who lived in the East Village in New York City for many years, not a lot surprises me. Okay. But what's interesting is that I remember her saying something to me and saying, I thought about taking that sticker off. And I'm like, I don't understand. She's like, because of the way that people view our business. And I said, wow. I said, I don't understand what. She said, because there are so many people that are not tolerant, that are not accepting. And I feel like they would not come here. And that's marketing, right? It's just something teeny that I think of. And what I asked her was, do you care? What do you stand for? And sometimes when we think of our marketing and think of other people judging us or talking bad about trying to be more inclusive, at the end of the day, ask yourself who you are. Ask yourself what matters most in life. Like you went, Denise over here is talking about kindness, right? She's not sitting in a forest singing Kumbaya. She's just thinking, like, what is it that I do each day that is kind? How would I want to be treated? How do I feel when I'm included? And if people, like we said, if you're going to exclude people just to include others, can you sleep with yourself at night? And I think these are some of the things, like you said, the client takeaway, the client intake forms. I think the whole husband and wife and all that stuff, personally, when I think of marketing, that's just a marketing technique so that I can get said husband or wife or family member to join said gym, and I can, get their money as well. But are there different ways to ask it? is what that comes down to. And I know, if there's something that I'm going to go around again. Siri, I'm going to just start with you right now of, what do we do? What are the takeaways, whether you're you own a gym or you're just an instructor, regards to pronouns or bathrooms or marketing, what takeaways can you tell people?
Yeah, I have a few. I'll share just some of the things that I've been working on. So one is in life and in my work as a fitness instructor, using gender neutral language, right? So instead of saying, ladies and gentlemen, hey guys, welcome step queens, right? There's so many words that we can, trust me, I've said them all over the years, but there's so many words that we can use that include genuinely everyone, even someone who doesn't feel comfortable with the queen label. Or, I had that bar class where I was, oh, hi, ladies, you're looking good. And then 5 minutes into the class, I realized there's a gentleman lurking all the way in the background. I thought, oh my God, so we've all been there. So I try to use words like friends, lovely people, everybody, folks, beautiful souls, whatever it is, right? But something that's all inclusive. Believe it or not, there's even airlines. Lufthansa is swapping out their ladies and gentlemen greeting when you board the airplane to passengers, because everyone is a passenger, right? So we can why wouldn't we say that? So I think that's one takeaway. I think questions around, should you have gender neutral bathrooms? I think it's always a good idea to ask for just like you ask for people's name, ask for their pronoun. If you have an intake form or some kind of database so that you know how they prefer to be referred to. Sometimes if you have a teeny tiny facility, it can be hard to create a gender neutral bathroom space. Ask your members, like I said, and I wouldn't make it specific to like members of the queer community, please take the survey. Ask all of your members, right. What are some of the things that we're doing at this facility, or what am I doing as an instructor in my classes or as your personal trainer that you really appreciate? And then what are one or two things that I could do differently to make this an even better experience for you? And Susan, I want to applaud your wonderful question in the chat, because you asked, how can you work with staff or coworkers who may have different viewpoints? And I think this is something that many of us have dealt with, and this is kind of a really core question. And I think back to what Christine was saying in the beginning, what Denise just says about kindness is, you stand for something, right? Maybe you stand for, I want everyone to feel like they can walk into my class and have a great time. Or maybe you stand for, I just want to be kind to everybody. That's what I want to be known for. So whatever it is that you stand for, just share that and put your stake in the ground and stand in your own authenticity. And if other people agree with that, wonderful. If they don't agree, that's just life.
Amazing. And I'm going to throw that over to Stacy. What and then Christine, and then Denise will hit you up. But Stacy, what do you think? So she said, so Siri talked about gender neutral words and wording. What are some takeaways that you could give to our listeners tonight?
Gender neutral language has been my greatest practice right now, for sure. So thank you. And it's been a journey, for sure. So my introductions in class is something that I'm really working on. I do say, hi, I'm Stacy. Welcome to this safe space. I want you to know that you're all safe here, and I am working on my pronoun usage and my gender neutral language. So if I slip up, please forgive me and come talk to me. Always my introductions are starting to be ever expanding as well. If there's anything that I can do to help you feel more included or more comfortable in this class. And that goes right along with if there are any recent injuries or surgeries, or if I have any students right now who are pre or postnatal. And even that term, do I have any students who are pre and postnatal, has been a challenging one for me to switch from women. But keeping it as neutral as possible has actually led to many thank yous and many follow-up conversations at the end of class. So I do know that it makes a difference. I feel that I am being more inclusive by making the effort to show my students that I'm trying. And that's the best that I can do at this moment. And clients is a different story. One-on-one clients, I do tend to have deeper conversations with, but you know how it is when you walk into a Tuesday night class. You've got 90 seconds to make your intro, and then you get right into the heart of what you're teaching. So I think it is important to kind of explain my platform, if we want to call it that. And my platform is always to be true, to be authentic. I'm authentic and genuine, and that sometimes gets me in trouble. It has over the years, but I come from an authentic place, and I mean well. So it's important for me to show my students that that is where I come from. And the more transparent I can be with them, the more they've been with me.
So we have a few minutes left, and I just want to hear some maybe golden nuggets from Christine and Denise, and remembering, bringing this back to our, kind of circling back of embracing the LGBTQ community and being inclusive in the fitness industry. Christine, what would you tell people listening, those of us in the industry right now, that we can do now, today, to make ourselves, again, Siri talked about, communication, and Stacy introductions, and, and say you're making the effort. Christine, what do you think?
I think in everything that you do, whether you're a group fitness instructor, manager, personal trainer, in anything that you do in fitness, and really just in life, but in fitness, is anyone being forgotten? When I teach a class, is anyone being left out? Is anyone being just forgotten in that space? And then I go back to thinking about my community and what I want to create and celebrate in my community, and like thinking about what role does someone's gender or someone's sexuality play in that, and play in my assumptions as well, because we all have lived experiences with a lot of assumptions, because those assumptions then affect how we then treat people unconsciously. You may not even be aware of certain things, and we all have a lot of years of experience, just even with the pronouns, even just saying she or he all the time, and not recognizing that that may not fit someone and that may not be comfortable for them. And it is some relearning, and it is mistakes that happen, and it is awkwardness, and it's okay, as long as you're working towards becoming better and being more inclusive and being accepting, and really understanding your role and how you affect someone else. Because again, we talked a little bit about intention and impact, and we really want to think about how this is going to impact someone else. If our goal really is to help people in health, then we can't help them if they're not wanting to come to us because they're not feeling included. So it's that building that bridge, so everyone that wants to come to your class is able to, and feels welcome and celebrated, not just welcome, just completely part of the community that you create. Because group fitness, more than any other type of fitness, is about community, is about people coming together. So you have no idea. I mean, I was silent about my sexuality. So many people aren't ready to have or even want a label on things. So people are in transition too. So I think it's important to really just think for a second, like, how can my actions, whether it be speaking in class or with exercises that you do, or the space that you provide in the programming that you create, how can what you do invite more people in?
Christine, that was fantastic. And Denise, I want to give you the floor for about 90 seconds.
2 seconds.
You got about a minute to tell us what do you suggest? You started us out with this, and now inclusivity in the fitness industry. What are some turnkey things?
My final thoughts are, especially for those that are 50 plus on the older side, or just teaching old dog new tricks type of person. Be open-minded, and you don't have to understand to be accepting. We don't have to understand everything. Because I just find myself saying, but I don't get it, I don't understand. Who cares? I don't have to understand. When my child's friend says that they're a they, them, I got to try to work that into the lingo somehow, even though it's awkward. Be open-minded, and that applies to fitness or really any group that you work with. So that's all. I just want to wrap up by saying you don't have to understand, and be more open-minded.
I just want to take a moment and thank every one of you, Christine, Denise, Siri, Stacy, for coming on, being authentic, being open, being vulnerable to everyone that's listening and everyone that will listen to this webinar, because I'm going to just throw it out there that I don't think any of us have all the answers. I don't think any of us know exactly what every single individual needs, but I do know that what we're trying to do is open the dialogue, trying to maybe move that needle to make just a few more people feel a little bit more included. And that's why we're here. And when we think of health, health is not just physical health, it's mental health. And
Absolutely.
feeling not included and feeling shameful to talk about things is all part of health. So I really appreciate each and every one of you for coming on today and talking about this topic, and everyone that showed up tonight. Kudos to all of you for taking the time in such a powerful and maybe a little uncomfortable at times to think about some of the things. So my challenge to everyone now is to really reflect. What is it that you are doing? What is it that you have done? And what can you do? Maybe it's one little thing to make yourself just a little bit better, and be open about it. And every single day you have a chance to not just change lives, but also save lives. So kudos to everybody.
Thank you.
I wish you all
a
wonderful, wonderful evening. Thank you to everyone, and
Thanks,
STW
everyone.
and
Thank
Sarah.
you. Real
Thanks,
pleasure.
Thank you for
Christine. Thanks,
letting me
STW.